Hey there, Broncos country. Stay with me because what happened in the last few hours is going to shake up everyone wearing orange and blue. While you were sleeping, the organization made another move that shows exactly where this team wants to go. I'm not talking about rumors. I'm not talking about speculation. I'm talking about money on the table, a signed contract, and a guaranteed future. Malcolm Roach just received a 3-year extension worth up to $29,250,000. That's right, you heard it. And before you think it's just another contract, let me tell you what this really means for this defense that's terrifying the entire league. Let's start with the basics because there are a lot of people who still don't understand the importance of this guy. Malcolm Roach isn't that player who's going to show up in the highlights every week making spectacular sacks. He's not that name everyone screams when the opposing quarterback hits the ground. But if you think that diminishes his importance, you don't understand anything about football. Roach is that type of player that coaches love and fans need to learn to appreciate. He's the guy who does the dirty work in the trenches, the guy who eats double teams in the middle of the line, the guy who frees up linebackers to make the plays that show up on television. When Sean Payton brought Roach here 2 seasons ago, a lot of people turned up their noses. He was just another former player of his from the Saints, another gamble that could work out or not. The initial contract was for 2 years and $7 million. Nothing crazy, nothing that caught attention. But look where we are now. The guy just got an extension that practically quadruples the annual value of the previous contract, from $3.5 million per year to something close to $8 million per season. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when you become indispensable. And look at the timing of this extension. The organization just came out of the bye week and started handing out contracts like it was early Christmas. First it was Will Lutz, the kicker who's being paid like a top 10 at the position. Then it was Luke Wattenberg, the center who just signed for 4 years and $48 million. Now it's Roach. 3 extensions in less than a week. You think that's a coincidence? This is strategy, family. This is an organization that knows exactly what it's doing and is building something solid for the next few years. Let me explain what's happening behind the scenes. George Paton, the general manager, isn't waiting for the offseason to arrive. He's not waiting for these guys to test the free agent market. He's being proactive, locking up players before other teams start waving tempting offers. And this makes all the sense in the world when you look at where this team is in the season. 9 wins and 2 losses. 3rd best defense in yards allowed. 3rd in points allowed. 6th best pass defense. 3rd best against the run. These numbers don't lie. Now let's talk specifically about what Roach brings to this defensive line. First, run defense. Remember how frustrating it was to see the Broncos getting beaten in the ground game season after season? Remember seeing opposing running backs running over the defense like nobody was there? That's changed drastically, and Roach is one of the fundamental pieces of that transformation. The guy weighs 289 pounds of pure muscle and uses every ounce of it to clog holes in the middle of the line. When you watch the games carefully, you notice that Roach is rarely blocked by just one guy. Opposing teams need to send 2 players at him because they know he'll destroy any running scheme if they leave him free. And you know what that means? That means somewhere else on the line, one of our pass rushers is in a one-on-one situation. That means Nick Bonitto has more room to work. That means Zach Allen can be more aggressive. That means Jonathan Cooper finds cleaner paths to the quarterback. Football is a chess game, family. Each piece has its function, and when they're all working together, you have what we're seeing now. A defense that's among the best in the league. A unit that's carrying this team on its back while the offense still finds its identity. And Roach is a central piece in this puzzle. Let's look at his numbers this season. He missed the first 5 games because of a calf injury, grade 2 strain, nothing simple. But since he came back, in 6 games, the guy has already accumulated 21 tackles and 2 sacks. These aren't numbers that will win individual awards, but they're consistent production numbers. And consistency is exactly what you need in a rotational player. But it's not just what he does on the field that matters. Sean Payton talked about this a few weeks ago and was very clear. The coach said that having Roach back in the lineup brings much more than just technical ability. He talked about the energy the guy brings, about his contagious personality in the locker room. Payton said Roach rarely has bad days, that he's that type of player who keeps everyone engaged even when things aren't going well. And that Broncos country is something that doesn't show up on the stat sheet but is worth gold. When you're building a winning culture, you need these guys who are locker room glue. You need players that teammates respect and want to play alongside. Roach is exactly that type of guy. He came here as a supporting player and became a fundamental piece, not just for what he does on the field, but for what he represents off it. Now let's talk about what this means for the future of the defensive line. Look at how many guys are already locked up in long-term contracts. Zach Allen just signed an extension at training camp. DJ Jones renewed during free agency. Jonathan Cooper signed last year. Nick Bonito secured his before the season started. And now Roach joins this group. The entire defensive line is locked up for the next few years. This isn't an accident. This is long-term vision. Sean Payton got here 3 years ago and made it clear from day one that he was going to build this team through the trenches. He said offensive line and defensive line would be absolute priorities. And look where we are. Both units are among the best in the league. The investment was heavy, but the results are showing. Talk to me, Broncos country. What do you think about the sequence of extensions? Do you agree that this is how you build a winning team? Leave it in the comments, because I want to know your opinion. And before continuing, if you're truly Broncos country and want to stay on top of everything happening with the family, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. Because every week there's exclusive content about our team. Don't miss a single play of this historic season we're living through. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's a guy who hasn't renewed yet and who's having a spectacular season. John Franklin Myers is playing at a high level and has already made it clear that he'd like to stay here. But so far, the organization hasn't contacted his agent to discuss an extension. And that raises an important question. Why the rush to renew with some and not with others? The answer probably has to do with priorities and budget. The organization is spending heavily to lock down the core of the team. Patrick Surtain II, Quinn Miners, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Cortland Sutton, Garrett Ballas, Wattenberg, Lutz, Roach, DJ Jones. All these guys have been extended or renewed in the last 2 years. That's a lot of money committed, and they still have to think about renewing with other players who will hit free agency soon. Franklin Myers is having an incredible season, no doubt. But maybe the organization is waiting to see if he can maintain that level or if it was just a temporary peak. Maybe they want to use the remaining money for other positions. Maybe they're planning to get someone younger in the draft. There are millions of variables, and we out here don't know exactly what goes through Payton and Payton's heads. What we know is that their strategy has worked so far. 9 wins in 11 games isn't luck. It's a job well done. It's having a plan and executing that plan with precision. And part of that plan is ensuring the right players are here for the next few years. Let's go back to Roach for a second because there's an important detail about his contract. $14 million guaranteed out of a total of $24 million in base value plus $5,250,000 in incentives. That means almost 60% of the contract is guaranteed. That's money he'll receive no matter what happens. That shows how much the organization trusts him and how much they believe he'll continue producing. And there's another interesting aspect. Roach is 27 years old. This contract will take him to 30. In other words, we're talking about his peak years. The years where defensive linemen are normally at the height of the combination between physical strength and experience. The organization is paying exactly for the phase where he should yield the most. That's good scouting work. Comparing with other defensive tackles around the league, $8 million per year puts Roach in an interesting range. He's not among the highest-paid guys at the position, but he's not at the bottom of the pyramid either. He's somewhere in the middle, which is exactly where a high-level rotational player should be. It's a fair contract for both sides. Now let me tell you something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but is fundamental. The way Roach plays, the guy has an absurd football IQ. Peyton has said this several times. Roach anticipates plays before they happen. He reads opposing offense tendencies. He knows when it's going to be a run to his side. He senses when the offensive lineman in front of him is getting tired and intensifies the pressure. These things don't show up in statistics, but make all the difference in the final result. How many times have you seen a running back gain 2 yards instead of 5 because Roach occupied the right space? How many times have you seen a quarterback have to rush the throw because Roach collapsed the pocket up the middle? These small wins accumulate over a season and turn into wins on the scoreboard. And there's one more important thing about having this entire defensive line renewed: chemistry. These guys have been playing together long enough to develop that harmony that only comes with repetition. They know exactly where each one will be on each type of play. They trust each other. And when you have that on a defensive line, you have a giant advantage over the opposing offense. Think about it. These opposing offensive linemen can study the Broncos' schemes during the week. They might even technically know what each player usually does. But they can't predict the chemistry, the silent communication, the last-minute adjustments that happen because these guys have already played hundreds of snaps together. That's impossible to replicate quickly. Family, let's talk about the bigger context here. The Broncos are 9 wins and only 2 losses. They're seriously fighting for a playoff spot. And they're not just trying to make the playoffs. They want to get in as a seed, with home field advantage, with a real possibility of making a deep run in January. And to do that, you need defense. Always have and always will. Look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl in recent years. All had solid defenses, all had defensive lines that could pressure the quarterback and stop the run. The Broncos are building exactly that. They're building a defensive unit that can compete with any offense in the league. A unit that can win games when the offense isn't having its best day. And this is crucial because, let's be honest, the offense still isn't where it needs to be. Bo Nix is showing flashes that he can be the franchise quarterback we need, but he's still a rookie. He's still learning. He'll still have difficult games. Having a defense that can hold any opposing team to under 20 points gives the offense room to grow without absurd pressure. Roach is part of that. He may not be the star, may not be the guy everyone talks about after the game, but he's an essential gear in this defensive machine. And now that he's locked up here for the next 3 years, the organization can make plans knowing this piece isn't going anywhere. Let's talk briefly about the connection between Roach and Peyton. They already know each other from New Orleans, where Roach started his career as an undrafted free agent in 2020. Peyton already knew what the guy was capable of, already knew his personality, had already seen him develop as a player and as a person. When he got here and had the opportunity to bring Roach along, he didn't think twice. That's one of the advantages of having an experienced coach like Peyton. He knows how to identify talent that other people ignore. He knows which players will fit into his system, and more importantly, he knows which players will embrace the culture he's trying to build. Roach checked all those boxes, and that's why he's being rewarded now. And look at the ripple effect of this. When players see the organization taking care of its own, paying fair extensions, recognizing hard work, it creates a positive environment. Other players want to come here. Other players want to renew when the time comes. You create a virtuous cycle where talent attracts more talent, and everyone wants to be part of what's being built. The Broncos spent years being irrelevant, spent season after season without making the playoffs, went through bad coaches, even worse general managers, questionable decisions that delayed the rebuild. But now finally there's a serious organization doing things the right way, and extensions like Roach's are proof of that. Another important point, his health. Yes, he missed the first 5 games of the season with the calf injury, but since he came back, he's been playing well and staying available. He doesn't have a history of serious injuries before that. He's not that type of player who lives in the infirmary. The organization clearly isn't worried about his physique in the coming years, otherwise they wouldn't have given all that guaranteed money. Let's contextualize this with Sunday's game. The Broncos face the Washington Commanders in a crucial game. Washington is 3 wins and 8 losses, but you can't underestimate anyone in this league. Every game is a war, and having Roach available and motivated after signing this extension is one more weapon in the defensive arsenal. Imagine his mental state now. He just secured financial security for the next few years. He just received the recognition he deserved. And now he's going to take the field wanting to prove the organization made the right decision. That kind of extra motivation can make the difference in key moments of the game. Family between us, this sequence of extensions shows something much bigger than just individual contracts. It shows that the Broncos finally have a clear identity. They're a team that plays for the collective. They're a team that values the trenches. They're a team that doesn't depend on a single star, but rather on a strong group working together. And that, in my opinion, is much more sustainable long-term. You can have an elite quarterback and still not win anything if the rest of the team doesn't work. But if you have solid offensive and defensive lines, you'll always be competitive. You'll always have a chance to win any game. The Broncos understood this and are investing heavily in it. And when you look at the results this season, it's impossible to argue with the strategy. Roach represents all of this. He's not the face of the franchise. He's not going to sell jerseys. But he's the type of player that champions have, the type of guy who does the dirty work without complaining, the type of guy that teammates respect and trust. And now he's locked up here for the next few years doing exactly that. And you know what else? This sends a message to the rest of the league. The Broncos are no longer rebuilding. They're no longer in development mode. They're here to compete now. They're locking down the core of the team because they believe this group can do something special. And each extension, each renewal, each move the organization makes reinforces that message. Look at the Broncos' upcoming opponents. There are tough games ahead. There are teams fighting for the playoffs that will bring their best. But now the Broncos can look ahead knowing that the backbone of the team is secured, knowing they won't lose key pieces to free agency, knowing they can build continuity and improve upon what's already been established. And that's rare in modern professional sports. With the salary cap, with player turnover, with the unpredictable nature of the league, it's very difficult to keep a group together for several years. But the Broncos are managing to do this through smart planning and precise execution, and Roach is further proof of that. Denver Broncos family, I want to hear from you. Are you excited about these extensions? Do you think the organization is making the right moves? Do you agree that Roach deserved this contract? Get down here in the comments and let's debate. I want to see everyone's opinion because the channel is ours. It's the family's. It's Broncos country's. And go ahead and drop that like if you enjoyed the content. Share it with that friend who's also passionate about our team. Let's spread the good energy because this season is being special and deserves to be celebrated by all of us. At the end of the day, extensions like Malcolm Roach's are about much more than football. They're about recognition. They're about loyalty. They're about building something bigger than just one season. The Broncos are putting together a team that can compete not just now, but for the next few years. A team that fans can be proud of. A team that represents the values of the city and the fan base. And when you see a guy like Roach, who came here without fanfare, worked in silence, earned everyone's respect, and is now being rewarded, it's impossible not to get a little emotional. That's how it should be. That's how you build a winning culture. That's how you make players want to give their all for the jersey. So stay tuned because this is just one more piece of the puzzle. There are more moves coming. There are more players who might renew. There's an entire season still ahead with a lot of football to be played, and you can be sure we'll be here covering everything, analyzing every move, bringing the hottest information to you who are truly Broncos country. Sunday there's a game. The Broncos are on the field looking for another victory. There's Roach motivated after signing this extension. There's a defense that's scaring the entire league. And there's us, the family, cheering and supporting like we always have. So get ready because good things are coming. Until the next video, family, Broncos country. Let's go all in.